doing fine. This is a quick feedback I would want to share with the PHCL 201 class that just conducted your interim assessment. Short answer type question that you just did. Maybe this will give you a fair idea of what to expect in terms of marking. So you may want to look on your screen now and see the first set. The questions were set according to the topics that you did. So you know you've done the mind-body problem. Because it's problems of philosophy, you've done the mind-body problem. We extended it to the question of idealism, the subjective one versus objective one. Then we did some reality versus appearance from Russell's perspective. And then we did the question of free will versus determinism in the context of moral responsibility. And then for the IA, we rested our questions on Locke's consciousness, okay? The discussion on consciousness according to John Locke. So this first set of questions that you would have engaged, I'm preparing this before you finish. The expectation was that you'd be done by now, but I'm told that there's a little extension. And so by the time you will all finish, I will be sharing this link to help you, first of all, mop up in preparation for the content that you would also see in your final exam for proper essays. These ones just solicited short answer responses from you and were worth 4 marks. But you may have an extensive version of such questions where you would get to choose from the given options, and it may count, may count for 25 marks per essay. And so you want to get the core thesis right for your preparation, and also for you to know how you have fared in your 20% interim assessment. So it's twofold, maybe even threefold, to help you prepare, to help you know how much you have acquired in terms of marks, and also to build your confidence in preparation for what is ahead. So the first question, this was randomized. So you, I tell people to always prepare. Human beings set questions. Questions don't set human beings. So I saw people asking for Pascal and stuff like saying, you want to engage the content, engage lectures, your groupings, the group work that you were doing, and so on, so that your own confidence will be built, no matter how the question is asked, you're able to do. So look at this, using a practical example, explain and give a brief, it's a brief critical response to occasionalism as a response to the mind-body problem. If you check the fact that you have an hour to do 5 questions for each of the topics, mind-body problem, idealism, reality versus appearance, free will versus determinism, and Locke's consciousness, that's 5 questions, each worth 4 marks, totaling 20 marks for 520, okay? And you're doing that in an hour. Then it means approximately each question is about 12 minutes. You spend about 12 minutes, 12 solid minutes on just one short answer type question. It's intentional so that you can have all the time to think for the specific question asked, and all the time to capture what you want to say in a concise, rounded way. So you don't have to write so much to say a little. It's a skill. You have to develop that. But we gave you 12 minutes. You should have been given about 2 to 3, at most 5 minutes if you're a slow typer. Okay, but we give 12 minutes intentionally so that you don't have too many excuses. Okay, you can have the time to go back to it. It wasn't a linear mode this time, it was randomized. So you may pause a question. I even gave you an icon to mark it. You haven't done question 2 yet, or you want to review the question 2, for example, and come back to it. All those so that you can be a bit more relaxed and take your time and type out your simple, statement. So it's not an essay. If you were writing an essay, then the problem is you don't understand the question, or you don't know how to be concise. And that is a skill that we want you to work on. Rounded, you hit the key things, and yet in a very crisp manner. That is elegant. That is a philosophical skill that you must have. If you went to UN conference or a 5-day conference, 3-day conference, and then BBC or Joy News or whichever outlet gave you just some 60 seconds or 30 seconds to comment on the conference. You're not now going to do the whole conference in the 3-day conference that was hosted from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. daily for 3 days. Are you going to say all that? You have to have a way of capturing the essence of the conference in that short time that you have been given to reach out to the whole world. That's a skill. That's a skill that we want you to work on. Okay. So such questions are meant to do that. So question one says, using a practical example, explain and give a brief critical response. It's a critical one to occasionalism as a response to the mind body. Occasionalism says what? So you know what occasionalism says. On the occasion of a physical stimuli, God puts what an accompanying mental stimuli there. And so that is what suggests or makes someone think that it is a physical hitting of your leg to the chair, for example, that causes the feeling of pain in that leg. What I've just done is to use an example to show you what occasional is, and I'm going to give the critical response. The challenge with such a view, or an objection that can be raised against such a view, is that sometimes someone may hit their leg against the chair and may not even feel pain. Okay, may not feel pain. So perhaps that will mean that God will be accountable for the pain that someone may feel, because for another person, God didn't make the person feel pain, which means we cannot then hold people accountable, perhaps, or we may we may not be able to hold people accountable, because God will be responsible for the, if you like, the mental stimuli, the mental pain we feel for an effect. So someone slapped me and I feel pain and I'm angry at the person. Why did you slap me? He said, but why? Why are you angry? He said, but it's painful. So, but I'm not the one who made you feel the pain. God made you feel pain. When I slapped the other sister, Johnny Bravo, when Johnny Bravo was slapped by the other sister, he slapped and he said, slap me again. Okay, now I've elaborated. So if you were writing using a practical example, say it. Occasionalism tries to explain the mind-body problem. So occasionalism says, on the occasion of a mental stimuli, a physical stimuli, for example, like a slap on your cheek, God puts the feeling of pain inside the cheek of the person who feels pain. And the critical response to that is, God then will be accountable for the feeling of pain. And that raises problems for accountability, moral accountability, or whatever accountability. Finished, yeah, done. The same type of question is what we are asking for question 2. So someone may get the one for occasionalism, and I don't choose that. The system randomizes it. So we try to encourage a certain fair way of allocating the questions. You look at this one. That's a question 2 asks the same question, but this time says a critical response to interactionism as a response to the mind-body problem. We discussed all to the whole class. So which one goes to who? It's not a problem for me. I do decide that. Okay. But your ability to respond, the questions are fair. Look at that. Okay, so interactionism says the causal connection that supposedly occurs between mind and body. Remember, we are responding to mind body problem. Occurs in the pineal gland. That is where the interaction goes on. But this response of interactionism, which suggests that if I feel pain, the interaction between the physical hit, my leg hit the table, and I feel pain, it occurs in the pineal gland. I've just given an example, practical one, to show the causal connection supposed between mind and body. And I'm saying that it occurs in the brain. That is what interactionism says. Now, the critical responses, but such a response only shows us where the interaction supposedly takes place and not how it is possible. How it is that two essentially distinct realities, mind and matter, are causally connected. So the problem, you are raising a critical response to them. The problem, they haven't solved the mind-body problem. And we know that already, it's coming from Descartes. Okay, so that is for the mind. But the third one is still around the same line of reasoning. It's just focuses on pre-established harmony. You can still use the table hitting, your leg hitting the table, physical leg hits the table, and you feel pain. And the author, the one who holds this view, says that it is not a causal connection at all. It is just a pre-arranged, orderliness. So wherever your leg hits the table, you are supposed to feel pain. The critique or critical response we can have is that sometimes our legs hit the table and we don't feel pain at all. We don't even remember that our leg has hit anything, because maybe we are focused on pushing baby out or something. So the physical leg, sometimes you finish everything before you even realize that you had a cut. You can't remember where it came. So if it was already pre-established, a harmony that was already pre-established, then why is there such exceptions? Remember the examples I gave in class. You give the flower and the lady smiles because she felt a joyful sensation. Another time you give the flower and she frowns. But you thought that the joyful sensation should have been a harmonious relationship between giving flower and having a joyful sensation per the pre-established harmony. Why is it that in another instance it didn't occur? So, okay, so that's what you captured in a simple instance to show that if this were so, then wherever you see giving of flowers, there should be there should be a commensurate accompanying response from physical stimuli to non-physical stimuli. That's a critical response. Should I say it in a straightforward way for you to see how it would have been just one statement? So a critical for pre-established harmony question 3 now. Pre-established harmony says if I hit my leg against the table and I feel pain, it is only because that is already preordained to be so. The challenge or the objection is that then every time I hit my leg against the table, I must feel pain. But sometimes I don't. I don't even feel anything. But I didn't realize if I have an eye to it, you think I even felt that my leg hit a table. No. My focus is on something. So here, I'm not feeling that pain. That's the objection. Meaning that there's a problem with saying that those two were preordained to happen. Question 4 says, explain Rouse's category mistake as a response to the mind-body problem. This is just explain. Then I ask you to use an example for clarity, like Rouse himself does. So Rouse thinks the mind-body problem is only arising because the author, the one who is raising that question, so Descartes here, okay, is confusing the language of two different categories. The thing, the substance talk, is what is generating the problem. And so he thinks that if that is corrected, then there will be no problem after all. And so the category mistake is simply what? While claiming that the language that is being used to make a case for the mind-body problem, to make it look like there is a mind-body problem, that language is what is faulty. It is confusing two different substances. So one thing that belongs to a certain category has been confused with another. He uses an example, he himself. He says, if you asked me to show you the University of Ghana, and I took you around and showed you the BAM library, the lecture halls, the lecturers that we have, our student bodies, etc., etc. I show you all these things. And then you say, oh, I've seen the University of Ghana. I'll be confused because I expect that University of Ghana is the composite of everything I've showed you. So when you are trying to ask me to show you University of Ghana, as if it is a thing that I can point to, like the library, like the lecture hall, like the pens that people use, like the office buildings. But University of Ghana is what we mean when we put all these particular things together. Its operation together, plus the things we are seeing, is what we call the University of Ghana. So he uses that to show that when we say mind, you don't be looking for a substance. You see things, so you may think of the material You see hands, you see legs, you see eyes, you see the operations of legs, eyes, legs, eyes, hands, all put together. Plus, see, the operations of it, you can't see or touch it. But you can't have the operation, how the thing is functioning, or operating, without the particular parts. So don't go asking for mind as if it is another thing. This is right, okay? Mind is the whole embodiment, the physical self, plus its operations put together. That is what mind is. Just like University of Ghana, the library, the lecturers, students, office buildings, plus the operation. So we can say University of Ghana has sacked that lecturer, or the student has been withdrawn from the University of Ghana. And it is not just the physical building you are talking about, which will be the body, but also the operation. So you don't belong to its grading system, don't belong to its, alumni association and what have you. And so mind should be conceptualized. So Raoult's book, The Concept of Mind, deals with that. Category mistake, you are confusing the language of two different categories of categories, if you want to hear it well. They don't belong together. So when you ask a certain question, it's like when you ask a question that is not directed at that kind of a thing. You make it look as if there are two things, and now you are looking for the other one because you have one, and you say they are causally connected. No, it's just one, perhaps. He doesn't go into the metaphysics, or he just does a linguistic analysis of it, right? And we have learned that. So he wouldn't even talk like a materialist and say that there is only one thing called matter. But he wants you to say that don't act that. There may not be one thing, but just a function, perhaps, of the physical buildings. And so the function of the building should not be another entity, substance, I think that you should be looking for. You shouldn't. That is his concern. All right, if you got that, I elaborated a bit more because it's a little technical, but the examples, we use all of them. So if I am feeling hungry, for example, by extension, that's where we get the disposition theorist and the functionalist theory. If I feel hungry, don't look for another entity responsible for hunger, the feeling of hunger. He says it's funny. It is the same physical, perhaps, you see, that functions in a certain way or has that disposition, not that two entities, one that is physical and the other one that is non-physical. So you create two substances and now you are looking for how the two are causally connected. That is right. Okay. Very good. Question 5 says state the three basic assumptions that give rise to the mind-body problem. First, to claim that there are two realities, mind and matter. Two, that these two realities are essentially distinct. This is lecture 1, 2. They're essentially, and 3, not just are they two and essentially distinct, but they are causally connected. If you hold on to these 3, you will create the mind-body problem. And these are 3 separate answers you should give. Question 4 sets, questions. We have done questions 4 and 5, so we have 6. Distinguish idealism from materialism as responses to the mind-body problem. Use examples for clarity. Straightforward. Idealism says mind. Ideas are the ultimate reality. Materialists think it is body or matter. Okay. So if you ask the idealists, the physical table you see there, it's not the reality. The real thing is the ideas of that supposed physical table that you have. So the idea of it, and I used the whole Dubai as an idea, a creation in your mind that was brought into materialization. Okay, you bring it to mind. The hairdresser will have to creatively see the hairstyle and then brings it. So the reality is the idea that hatches the material. See several examples that we just need one to show idealism versus materialism. Question 7, use a practical example, briefly distinguish mind from body. So in any 3 different ways, according to the official doctrine. So mind is supposedly private. And body is public. mind is supposed to be I gave in class. But you can put someone's physical body in the prison room and lock it because body has extension. But mind, you can't lock the person's mind in that room. Says those who subscribe to the official doctrine. I just showed you instances. It's straightforward. 2-3 lines can make the distinction easy. You show the privacy. So my feeling of my thoughts is private to me. You can't feel my thoughts for me. You see, these are supposed to be mental state, private to me. My state of being is accessible to me, not to you. You can't be conscious for me. And so on and so forth. Okay, so mind is private, non-extended. What's the other one? Whilst body is public, extended, and incorporeal. Body is corporeal, mind is incorporeal. Okay, so we have that one. That was question 7. Question 8 states the 4 characteristics of mind according to John Searle and explain it. And this is detail from your slides. So consciousness, subjectivity, intentionality, causation. You can choose subjectivity and consciousness and explain that to show how those are supposed to be private versus the others that are supposed to be public. And with that, you are down with topic 1, which you get any one of those as the system randomizes. And you should be able to answer that for 4 marks. I want to go to the next topic 2, which is on idealism. And I think that we can run a bit more quickly than that. So for the idealism questions, question 1 was identify a thinker, discuss and discourse who is both an idealist and a rationalist. Explain why it's Plato. Idealist because he believes that ultimate reality is mind, a world of forms, remember. Every other thing, particular world is a photocopy of the original, the world of forms. Okay, so that's idealist. He believes that there is only reality is mind and its ideas. And he's rationalist as well. So that's why we choose Plato in this course, not outside of the course. You can get 1,001 of them. But in the course, we focused on an idealist who is also a rationalist, was Plato, I think. Check your slides on idealism, you see. And he's a rationalist because he believes that we come to know the source of our knowledge is through mind. Give 3 questions. To give 3 different simple examples. Simple examples of Paul Berkeley's critique of Locke's primary versus secondary qualities. And I give you a specific reference. Use Berkeley's proof on inseparability. Berkeley simply wants to tell us that we cannot have a textureless square table. That's all. That's one. Give 3 different simple examples. A textureless square table. Texture has to do with secondary qualities. Square has to do with primary qualities. So he's telling you that you can't separate the two. Where you have a table that doesn't have a texture but has a shape. That is not possible. You can't separate the two. That's one example. 2, you cannot have so you can do a tasteless round orange, showing that you can't have the shape round without the taste coming with it, or vice versa. A 3rd one, we cannot have let's turn it a round, colorless football. Round is shape, so fixed, and therefore we think that we can have it as primary, and yet we won't have it. No, we can't have a round, colorless. So 3 simple examples to support Berkeley against Locke. Question 3, give 3 different simple examples to support Berkeley's critique of Locke's primary. This time, the specific reference is use Berkeley's proof on the relativity of all qualities. So, for example, here again, we need 3 examples. Think around it for a minute. So let's use some examples for relativity of all qualities. Inside the aeroplane at the top there, if you saw a huge building down if you want the ground, inside the aeroplane up there, that huge building will almost be like a mattress box. And we are dealing with a quality that should be primary, therefore fixed, unchanging, independent of the observer, according to Locke. But see, it is big, the size is big if you were down next to the building, but in the plane, that big thing for Nancy, who is down here, will be small for a star. who is in the plane there. So whether primary or secondary, our friend Buckley is showing that even though primary, it is relative, it depends. We can use another one. So here, for the relativity of all qualities, you want to look for primary qualities because Locke doesn't disagree that secondary qualities are relative. So you pick primary qualities which are supposed to be objective, therefore not relative to the observer, and show that even that can be relative. Okay, so I've used size inside the aeroplane next to the building. I can use shape. Remember W, that one person standing northwards sees it as M, and the other person standing over there sees it as W. It's a shape, which is in Locke's terms primary and therefore not relative. But you can use that to show that it depends on the point of view now, the person observing. Okay, so that is the second. I use size. I've just used shape, and we can also use what each other position. We did that in class with illustrations. Depending on which direction you are counting from, I may count the third person, and you may be counting that person as the second because of where you are sitting. There are 4 people standing in front of us. If I count from the left, I would say that the second person is 1, 2 from the left. But if you counted from the right, you get to this person by the third count. So for you to be the number 3, and I would say, no, it's number 2, number 3, number 2, because you are counting from different. It's called it's the problem with the position. Okay, and therefore, if our friend thinks that position is objective, it is not. It's also relative. Okay, 3 examples: counting from being the aeroplane, other person down there. The third one, whatever. Observing a shape on the ground, or number 9 on someone. Just if you turn it, the one standing over there will be seeing 6, number 6, you'll be seeing number 9. And we are both correct. Even though it's a shape we are there. If you got that, then we can move to question 4. Identify, I think, discuss and discuss who is both idealist and consistently empiricist. I intentionally put the consistency so that you don't have ambiguity. Explain why you think so. We will take Berkeley. Is that correct? Berkeley, because even though we picked Locke, we don't think his idealism is a consistent one because he still wants to make a case for substance dualism, like his predecessor Descartes did. And that is where he has difficulties that Berkeley uses his 5 proofs to show him that you can't maintain your substance dualism and still advocate for idealism. Okay, so we want that the consistent one would be Berkeley. And why do we think so? Because Berkeley's idealism, he's an empiricist, yes, who is both idealist and consistent. So Berkeley is empiricist and idealist, and his idealism insists that what is real is mind and ideas. He's not ambiguous about that. Locke thinks there can be matter, where we are talking primary qualities. See that? How can you be idealist and still make a case for the existence of matter? So the answer is Berkeley. Question 5, distinguish the concern of the rationalist or empiricist from the concern of the idealist or matter. So the rationalist or empiricist is concerned about the source of knowledge, epistemology, while the idealist or materialist is concerned about knowledge, metaphysics, what is real. So the first 2, rationalists and empiricists, are dealing with an epistemological question of how do we know, how do we source our knowledge, whilst idealists and materialists are dealing with metaphysical concerns, which is what is real, what exists. Okay, the 2 put together is what I'm asking for. Question 6 says, distinguish the claim of the objective idealist from that of the subjective idealist studied. Simple. Those are we studied. Objective idealist, Locke, says he's idealist, but you see what he's saying, there can be some reality outside of the knowing mind when it comes to primary qualities. That reality objectively exists without the knowing mind. So he thought that shape, size, position, like we studied extensively, could exist without the knowing mind. So it's not my feeling of it that dictates the shape, for example, of the envelope which has the money, or the size of the building, or whatever. He thinks that those ones are objective. It doesn't depend on the subject. But when it comes to the secondary qualities like the color and whatever, that one depends on it. We did a good job on that. Okay. Now that is what his compatriot Berkeley disagrees with him. Berkeley thinks that his kind of idealism insists that all ideas are subjective. It will depend on the mind that is doing the knowing, the perspective of the observer to the supposed physical object that is being observed. Okay, so to be, it should be perceived, says, and that is it. But he says, explain what it means to say that Locke was a substance dualist like Descartes. Locke also believed, because of his primary quality thing that he introduced, he believed that there can be two realities, mind and matter, substance, what exists, two. Just like Descartes. The only difference is Locke went the empiricist way, Descartes went the rationalist way. That's all. Simply that. Look at your slides, the discussion on Locke's philosophy summarized, and you'll see it there. It's a substance dualist. I didn't ask you any question on his epistemological dualism. That means he said that there are two things: the mind that is doing the knowing and that which is known. That is where there's a problem for him, that Berkeley points out. Substance dualism makes him admit of matter. How can you be idealist and make a claim of material substance? Okay, that's a critique from his folk Berkeley. That's what we have explained. Question 9 says, how would you describe Berkeley as a monist, but Descartes as a dualist? Monists believe that there's only one ultimate reality. So Berkeley believes that there's only one ultimate reality, mind and its ideas. That makes him clearly a monist. Which type of monism? The idealist type, not the materialist type. Okay. Locke is suspect because he seems to admit of two ultimate realities. So if you call him an idealist, it's like a Christian that doesn't do the Christian thing very well. So you have suspicions around. Descartes is clearly a dualist, and that is why his supposition that there are two ultimate realities generate what we call the mind-body problem. All right, that's the second topic. Then we go to the third, then the fourth. Some of them, I think, I will leave them to you. Just highlight a few. We are on the question 3. So we've done mind-body problem, we've done idealism, and here we are just building a bit more on the third one, reality versus appearance, on Russell. Because you already saw Plato. So Russell's own question 1 says, Russell may agree with the premise of the consistent idealist, but disagree with their conclusion. Briefly explain this statement using a practical illustration. So Russell agrees with the consistent idealist, not the one who is eating his cake and having it. He goes this way and comes. That's Locke. So the consistent one will be Berkeley. What is the premise of Berkeley? Every knowing is tied to a knowledge. Whenever I am knowing, it will be tied to the knowing, my empiricist, remember. So if I touch the table, my feeling of it is what I know. You can't impose your feeling of the table on me. How I know it is what I know. You see, the examples that I give, what we have seen, what we have handled, what our hands have touched, that is what we can test. It's a strictly empiricist language. Knowledge as an empirical knowledge will always be tied to the knowing mind, the mind that is doing the knowing. Okay. However, the conclusion from this, which Russell disagrees, is when you claim, therefore, that the reality of the thing is just how you know it. That one, Russell says, you have jumped, you are alluding to things that you can't substantiate. The fact that you know him to be something doesn't mean it is it. And so we saw how Russell used the table in the room there, and how when you change the point of view, how you saw it differs, and then we even translated it to show its practical relevance, so that you may see God as the God that answers by fire. He's a lion of the tribe of Judah, for one. That's focus on Christ as the God factor. The next minute, he is the lamb that was slain, and yet he was the dove that is, different perspectives, point of views, knowledge. We even went into science and showed you how the heliocentric view has taken over the geocentric view of how we know the world. So how we know it, whether I alone knowing it or we collectively know, it's knowledge. That's how reality presents itself to us. It doesn't mean that is what reality is. Russell points that is a bolder statement that you don't have the warrant to make. So he disagrees with the idealist, consistent one, who from the claim that every knowing is tied to a knowing mind, they jump into, therefore, what we know of a thing is the thing's reality. He disagrees with that conclusion. That was what I was asking. Okay. All right. Question 2 says, what is Russell's answer to the question of whether what we experience is what is there? I've already answered that. Show how important his notion of point of view is to his answer. It's just like what I said earlier. Point of view shows how the thing is revealed to you, especially when we are dealing with the experience, the sensed kind of, so empirical knowledge, not rational one. The point of view of it must not necessarily mean that it is the reality. It may be the real, it may not be. So Russell says we have to have that openness to allow reality to speak to us. It may coincide with what we know of it or not. So we may know the brother to be a good guy, and he may not be, or he may be. Leave it open so that you are able to investigate further when you have to. But what do we immediately know according to Russell? Look at what do we immediately know, knowledge. Not what are we immediately aware of. This is coming from Russell. Explained with an example. What we immediately know, knowledge, according to Russell, is sense data, not sensation. Sense data, the data we gather. So when I'm okay, let's use on orange. When I bite the mango fruit or the orange, let's use mango. Okay, when I take a bite of it, when it is in my mouth, I'm having sensations of taste, but I don't have knowledge yet. I'm having immediate awareness of a taste. When it gets into my taste buds and I feel it to be sweet, I have gathered knowledge. It's a data now. Which data? Sweetness. Okay, which you can't take from me. I did the biting. So I'm having the sensations and I feel it to be sweet. Sweet is the data I gathered from the sensation. So the data is the knowledge, sense data. The immediate awareness is sensation, which is the tasting, seeing, touching, smelling. See that? So the perfume, the sensations of the perfume you have is what makes you buy, based on the data you gathered from the senses. So what do we immediately know? That answers the next question. So I'm done with the next one. We immediately know the sense data. And I've used an example to show. Question 4, distinguish what we immediately know from what we are immediately aware of. In Russell's terms, I've explained that as well. We are immediately aware of sensations, which helps us gather sense data. You can use the perfume, you can use the mango, you can use the texture of the table. When I attach it, I am feeling. Based on that, I gather smoothness or roughness. Question 5, what do we infer from what? In Russell's terms, we infer the physical of this, an inference we make. How do we make that inference? From the data gathered, so data of redness, roughness, sweetness, whatever, I put all together and then jump, infer that this must be a table because it has a round shape. I think from my sensations, I gather the data of roundness. Okay, I touch it, I gather this data of smoothness, and so I put it together. I presume, I infer that it must be a table. We infer the table, the physical object from the data gathered. 6, if the student says that she has never known her roommate to be a football fan, therefore her roommate is not a football fan, what will be your critical response to her from your knowledge of Russell's reality versus appearance discussion? Well, I've answered that as well. What you know of a thing need not necessarily be the thing's reality. What you know may be how it appears to you. So they may be the sense data you have gathered, and you are entitled to that because I can't share that point of view with you. But to impose it, to claim, therefore, that she is not a football fan, you are making a statement of reality matter. She is not what there is, not how I know it, but what there is. And so you have moved beyond that. The same with this one. It's just a refined one. Any one of them will get you. If the student says that she also ate the meal and it tasted fine, so her roommate is wrong when he says the food did not taste fine. Well, my taste buds are not yours. So how I feel about the food, what my interpretation of the food is mine. You can't force me. Look at the different meals we have. Look at different hairstyles, different perfumes, different skin colors, different dress codes. It's because people see, hear, touch, taste differently from each other. Okay. But the concern is when you impose what you think of a thing, what you feel, touch, taste, onto the other and claim that that is its reality. The Russell cautions all of us, from faith to politics, to social standing, to cultural differences, to be careful imposing our viewpoint on the other person. With that very rich philosophical teaching, we move to topic 4, free will. This is determinism. And that one is question 1. Using an example in each case, for my special students, is free will, determinism, and moral responsibility. Okay, we tied it to in question. So the discussion of free will versus determinism is in the context of moral responsibility. Question 1 says, using an example in each case, distinguish determinism from indeterminism and predeterminism. And I don't think I should even spend 2 seconds on this. Determinism is heavily hinged on causality. So a determinist view is the one that claims that whatever happens must have been caused by antecedent factors that condition that effect. It doesn't necessarily make a claim about predeterminism, that God or an eternal being conditioned it to be so. That will be predeterminism. Read the compiled reading that we referenced in class and engaged extensively. You see what I'm saying? Indeterminism says we shouldn't make everything, the effect of an antecedent, because sometimes we consciously, intentionally, there we go, or freely choose. It wasn't any antecedent conditioning that gives rise to the effect. Those are the 3. Okay. Question 2 says, using an example, briefly explain how regret gives support to them. We did this several times in class. If I can regret what I did, then doesn't this suggest that I could have chosen to do other than what I did? Well, the thing was programmed to be so by the antecedent conditions or by a predetermined, or eternal God somewhere. If it was predetermined or determined by antecedent factors such that it couldn't have been otherwise, then why would I regret something that I could have? Do you regret being male or female? That's not regret. You don't choose it. You were born male or female by your parent. Maybe your parent could regret if they went to do some lab mechanisms to get a female. They chose. See, so they can say we have regretted. But if you didn't choose it, see that you are just it. How do you regret being a woman? Therefore, regret, the notion or the concept, the idea, the thought of regretting is a strong argument for the free willists. And it looks like it is not something that you can throw out. We can regret our actions a lot. So perhaps that gives some grounding to the free willists. Question 3 says, if I have no objection against the principle of causality, that means if I agree with the principle of causality, would I be a determinist, an indeterminist, or a predeterminist? Why or why not? I think the obvious answer is you would likely be a determinist or even a predeterminist, you see, but not an indeterminate, because the principle of cause and effect is what grounds deterministic views. Whatever antecedent factor, in other words, whatever happens was caused by a preceding antecedent fact. So if God has meant it that Christ must die on the cross, something like that. Okay. Some even extend that to mean that, so if God meant it that someone must betray it, Judas didn't do anything well. We can open out that discussion a bit more, like we did in class the last time. It might have been meant that someone would betray, but was it a matter of choice? Who will fit that card? And then Judas chose to be that card. Is it a possibility? If so, then there is still some element of free will there. But I just wanted to show you that causality then inspires the determinists or the predeterminist view. So if you don't object to causality as a principle, then you are likely going to be a determinist or a predeterminist, not the other one, which is indeterminist. Okay, question 4, almost done. You can engage the question on consciousness with your instructor in class. I took his questions, I just typed them in. So we'll be done after this. Okay, question 4, to what extent is determinism compatible with moral responsibility? Use an example to make your point. In other words, can determinism still be compatible? Can they cohabit with moral responsibility? Yes, to an extent. If you looked at soft determinists, they are still determinists. Like Hume, they only say that those actions are emanated from your intentions. You choose it, meaning that as a result of your attitudes, your inclinations, and what have you, then we should hold you accountable, because it is your attitude, your intentions, whatever, that made you act that way. But someone else could say, no, there is no way that determinism can be compatible with moral. I will mark that too. Let me see why. The person says, no, Doc, because some determinism ultimately reduces into hard determinism. Whatever it is that you call my attitudes, my intentional inclinations, and whatever, they emanated from external factors outside of my control. What if I wasn't created at all? Or if I didn't have a parent that brought me to this world at all? Will I have to choose whether I want to go A or B for me to be accountable? What if my upbringing was different? So the person will say that choices internally made by me were influenced or determined by external. Therefore, there isn't anything like soft versus hard. The person diffuses the soft, hard boundaries. Then he or she might say, so there's no way you can hold people morally, maybe legally accountable, yes, because the law must not necessarily be right all the time. We just have to live in the society we didn't create. We have to organize society in the way that we can live, even if it's unfair. But morally, they are not accountable. It wasn't their fault. So someone may go northwards or southwards, depending on how you explain it with your example. Either of them passes. Question 5 says, give a critical response to the subdeterminism. You have done that. Subdeterminism could be reduced to hard determinism, depending on the author you are dealing with. Okay, then question 6, give a critical response to the free willist view of morality. Use an example to make your point. If the free willist doesn't want to admit to causality, that whatever happens is preceded by antecedent condition, that condition the things that couldn't have been otherwise. You say it's not something that caused it, then what? Did we just choose arbitrarily by chance? There is no coordination. Hey, then that's problematical. Plenty. Because it won't add anything. Things happen just by chance. Is that the point? I doubt. So it is not a straightforward matter that if you are not a free willist, if you are not a determinist, free will is the way to go. It has its own challenge as well. And that is why, like we studied in class, we have to see where the blend is and where we want to emphasize one over and above the other, and where we would want to keep the other one paramount over the other. Let me show you the questions for Locke's consciousness. And since my colleague is continuing with you, he's able to meet you in class to give you what he was looking for those questions. But each one of them is counting for 4 marks. So whichever one gets to you, you'll get the response. I am done with my sessions with you till the last session where we meet together. So I won't be able to meet you to tell you what the expectation was. And so I've done mine with you. You would not want to preempt him, but you would meet him. The questions that he asked you, either of one of them, any one of them would have gotten to you is 1. Briefly explain what it means to be a person. So if you got that, then you answer. In fact, the question originally was briefly discussed, but I think discussion for short answer type question, word formats, will not be a fair one. So I made it briefly explain so that you can do that in class. Then question 2 says, what do you think are the essential mental qualities that define all people? Very straightforward as well. Question 3, what do you think is the relationship between consciousness and your concept of self-identity as something that remains the same in different times and places? You would seek clarification on that. Although that's question 4 now, although Locke continues the themes initiated by Descartes, put in terms of the nature of knowledge and the nature of the self, explain why he grounded everything in experience. I think when I was giving you the substance dualism and I showed you, Locke took everything wholesale from Descartes, except the source of that knowledge. Descartes says it's rationalist, reason, intellect, what have you. Locke says it's the empirical, the senses, what have you. But he took everything wholesale, if you like, from Descartes in terms of his epistemology, the substance dualism, whatever. Why? Why do you think he grounded his, philosophy, his epistemology on experience rather? you can engage your instructor on those. So those were the questions, and I think that I've already started grading, and I like the feedbacks I'm seeing. I will put all together and then release them for you to see. Thank you very much. I wish you well. Hopefully we'll meet by the last week together after you have mopped up your few topics left with Dr. Boachi. This has been yours truly, Dr. Nancy Miles for GMF, discussing your interim assessment for PhD 201 with you, main campus and city campuses. Have a wonderful week ahead. All the best and take care.